Hey yo, SBS 114 is out. So we got a lot of interesting trivia to cover and we got some videos confirmed. So I'll be linking the videos that I've done on the topic throughout the video, and any that I can't link because I probably run out of tabs, they'll be at the end of this video. So first things first, happy belated birthday to Sanji, as his birthday was March 1st. And One Piece has surpassed Superman in sales, reaching a total of over 600 million copies worldwide. It finally happened, boys. Super excited. And we even got a video commemorating the occasion. That's insane. So with that being said, on with the SBS. We have a confirmation in which that Gil Bastar, Captain John, and Ganzu of the Rocks Pirates were the previous holders of the Hollow Hollow fruit, the Magnet fruit, and the Bomb fruit, not held by Perona, Mr. Five, also known as Jim, and Captain Kidd. So that was confirmed. The Gil Bastar one is the most interesting one to me, and we made a video about this because in the series Wanted, which is a one-shot before One Piece in which Gil Bastar appears, he actually sees and communicates with a ghost of a rival he recently killed named Wild Joe. So I don't know if that's going to be worked into the canon of One Piece, that Hollow Hollow fruit users can see ghosts, but we'll have to wait and see. But I find that very funny that his story involves him communicating with a ghost in Wanted, and then in One Piece proper, he gets the ability to generate ghosts. Also with Gil Bastar, there's a weird thing that we covered too. He seems to be able to grow multiple arms out of his back, and his zombie also has multiple arms. So that's a biological occurrence. It's not Dofus related, which I find quite interesting. So we'll link those two videos around here. But following that, we have a very interesting confirmation that we did talk about a bit recently. We have confirmation that the earrings that you see the various empresses of Amazon Lily wear are treated as a crown. So they are a symbol of status in Amazon Lily society. We talked about this being quite culturally insensitive in regards to S Snake, because I figured that they were a cultural piece that was important to Amazon Lily and the ascension of becoming an empress, and that is the case now. We have that confirmed. So yes, Vegapunk continues to be insensitive and bad, because why does S Snake have them? She's not an empress. So that's a very interesting development. I'm glad we got to see that, because Gloriosa had the earrings, Tritoma had the earrings, and Shakuyaku had the earrings. And now Boa Hancock, of course, has the earrings. So yes, they are a crown of sorts. This is a very interesting development, because now what does that mean for S Snake? Is she going to be the new empress of Amazon Lily in the future? I doubt it, but it's not impossible. But I forgot to mention what is mentioned here in this question is that those who are regarded as the strongest are also regarded as the most beautiful on Amazon Lily, and they in tandem are both the empress and the captain of the Kuja Pirates. So with that being said, S Snake is a bit of an interesting factor here, because in being a seraphim, she is one of the strongest beings on the planet, as described by Vegapunk. So I don't know if that's going to translate in any significant way if we ever integrate S Snake into Kuja culture, but that is something to keep in the back of your mind for the future. Anyway, moving on. The name of Rox D. Zebek's sword, or Davy D. Zebek's sword, is called Eclipse. This is kind of an interesting development too, because of course, you know, the head ship of Blackbeard's armada is called the Saber of Zebek. Blackbeard has the ability of the Darkness fruit. So it's funny that he named his ship after his father's saber, which is called Eclipse, and now he is the embodiment of darkness. I find that very interesting. Very interesting development indeed. Okay, now, We got some downloads for Gecko Moria, or should I say Kazuki Moria, because it was confirmed that the grave site dedicated to Kazuki Moria was indeed for Gecko Moria. They are one and the same person. So I'll read this verbatim. Okay, here we go. The reader says, is the Kazuki Moria seen in the chapter 1158 cover page actually Gecko Moria? I bet you've received a mountain of questions about this. Please tell us, Odachi. Oda says, that's right. I actually wanted to reveal this during the Wano Country arc, but I couldn't find the right opening to fit it in. Based on the information I've given you all so far, Moria was described like this. He once fought with Kaido. After his entire crew was killed, he developed a personality that relied on others. He possessed the corpse of the legendary samurai Ryuma and the famous sword Shusui. From those points, you might have imagined he had been to Wano before, but what I really want to share is the reason for his fight against Kaido. When Moria was a young boy, he drifted ashore in Wano. The people of the Ringo region took him in warmly because they cherished him and gave him the name Kazuki in honor of his strength. Moria, who had already set out to sea as a pirate, returned to fight Kaido in an attempt to save the people of Wano from his attack. However, he was defeated. After his loss, Moria felt so ashamed that he left Wano without saying a word. The people assumed he had died and built a grave for him. Since I cut this from the main story, it's just a need-to-know bit of trivia. Oh my goodness gracious, we all were so set on this being true. I knew this was true because it made too much sense. So this has a lot of implications because we know he's still alive in the story so far. If he joins Cross Guild, he might be the poneglyph man for Cross Guild. He might be because they don't have one right now. Oh man, because we don't know what that entails of in him being a part of the Kazuki clan, even though he was just an honorary member. We don't know what that means because he was taken in. So we don't know what that means exactly. Also, that also means that Moria is from somewhere else originally, which could mean that he is indeed an Oni like Kaido. And like I've been saying, he probably is the first Oni that we see in the series. That is so interesting. Okay, so does he know Odin? Oh my goodness, the questions. Oh, I'm so happy this was confirmed. And that makes sense too. That's why he's a swordsman for most of the series. Because he's not relying on Doppelman, he's relying on the katana that we see him with when in his younger days fighting Kaido. And then, of course, he exchanges that for twin scissor blades in the present. Man, oh man, that's good. And I still think that's probably why Teach wanted him as a backup plan just in case pudding didn't work out. I bet you that's the reason why. Because why else would Moria be useful to Teach? You kind of see what I mean? Oh, that's so good. I'm so happy that was confirmed. Yes, sir. Okay, so Oda confirms that the mother of Shanks and Shamrock is called Magnolia. Now, the funny thing about this is that magnolias bear red seeds and fruit. And of course, you know, Magnolia, the character, has red hair, and that's where Shanks and Shamrock get their red hair from. So that all lines up together. I find that very interesting. We also find out that the name of Rox's ship is called Rox's Fury. So this is the second ship that just involves Rox's name. In a way, even though like Rox is technically an epithet, that's not his real name. His real name is Davy D. Zebek, but still it's funny. So his ship is called Rox's Fury, and then his son's ship, inspired by his father, is called the Saber of Zebek. What is with that? That's so funny to me. Why is that a thing? Okay, so moving on. Next up, we have some transponder sale trivia in regards to the Straw Hats. So the reader says, hello, Oda Sensei. You've mentioned that the Denden Mushi don't mind being captured by humans because they get fed. Does that mean that the Denden Mushi kept by the Straw Hat crew get to eat delicious meals made by Sanji? I love to know the details of how the crew takes care of their Dindin Mushi. Oda responds, right, well, first of all, on the Sunny, there is one long-distance Dindin Mushi. Additionally, 5 members, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, Robin, and Frankie, carry baby Dindin Mushi, short distance, which they sometimes lend to each other. Basically, as long as they have water, Dindin Mushi can survive for about 3 months without food. However, since communication via thought waves uses a lot of energy, it's best to give them some leftovers after use. They are let loose in places like Robin's flower bed or Nami's tangerine grove on the upper deck of the Sunny. They are perfectly happy if you occasionally give them their favorites like lettuce or cabbage. Apparently, on days when they get sprinkled with water from a watering can, they get so excited that their signal can reach all the way to the other side of the world. So, in the live action, we actually get to see a Dindin Mushi or transponder snail being fed lettuce or cabbage. So we do know now that that is canon, and they do eat lettuce and cabbage. And in a art request, we see Ivankov and Dragon sprinkling some Dindin Mushi. So yes, they do like water. So we know that to be true. So that was cute. I like that a lot. Also, this is unrelated, but I just want to point this out because I didn't realize this in another video. In that same color spread, Dragon is wearing a Western style dragon on his shirt. I didn't know that. Check out the other video I made. So next up is a lesson in pay attention to everything, because apparently Stussy's fruit, the Bad fruit, is named as such and is spelled as such because of a non-canon character by the name of Patrick Redfield, who was the main antagonist of a 3DS game called One Piece Unlimited World Red. And he's a very interesting character because he's technically the first Bad fruit user in the franchise. His fruit was called the Bad fruit mythical model vampire. So it's very interesting that Stussy's fruit was named to match the spelling of his fruit. And it's also quite interesting that both of them are vampire coded. Him quite literally, and Stussy very figuratively, but also in a near literal sense, because she is a vampire bat, even though her fruit doesn't designate her as a vampire bat. In how she acts in the arc of Egghead, she acts like a vampire bat. She drinks blood. It's very, very vampire bat coded, meaning the real animal as opposed to the mythical creature that Patrick Redfield is. What's also quite interesting is that Patrick Redfield is from this, I guess, everlasting well of ideas in which you have various people break out of Impel Down due to Blackbeard's whole tournament that he held in level 6. Because now we have him and Douglas Bullet, who are a part of that. What's so interesting about him specifically is that supposedly in the game, Brook knows whom he is, which is very weird, especially seeing as how we're in a arc now in Elbaf in which Brook's past is being brought up. It's also quite interesting considering we have Ragnir here in Elbaf, an item who has eaten a mythical Zoan fruit being wielded by a mythical Zoan fruit user in Loki, because Patrick Redfield finds himself in a very similar situation to Loki, a mythical Zoan fruit user who uses an item that has also eaten a mythical Zoan fruit. Because Patrick Redfield is, of course, a user of the Bad fruit mythical model vampire, but in the events of One Piece Unlimited World Red, he uses a pen that has eaten the dog fruit mythical model Baka Danuki. And that pen is called Pato. And it's basically just like the mythological version of a Tanuki as I understand it. So that's very interesting that his whole setup is very similar to that of Loki and Ragnir. And in the age of supposed non-canon things becoming canon all of a sudden, like how the many animals of One Piece film Strong World have become canon in Elbaf, who's to say that Patrick Redfield can't become canon in the future, because we don't know what's going to actually happen as we move forward, especially seeing as how Brook happens to know whom he is. We don't know if that's going to be canon later on in the series, because the whole tournament that Blackbeard held could indeed have real world implications from the people who broke out of Impel Down during that event. We don't know. But moving on, we get a breakdown of the good and bad futures of Yamato. And this is why Yamato is going to be the thumbnail, because at 40, Yamato says, "It's Wano country. Let's go have a visit, Luffy." This implies that Yamato is going to join the crew. You can't see it any other way. I don't want to hear it. What does that mean? What does that mean? Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, that can't mean anything else. But then at 60, she does a very interesting Oden impression in which she says, "I don't want to becoming a big shot." So she doesn't want to become a big shot, much like how Oden didn't want to become the second commander of Whitebeard's fleet. So not only is she going to join the Straw Hat crew, she's going to be a powerful member in the main cabinet, presumably, and will probably have to lead one of the ships of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet in the future. That's what I'm getting. And here she's wearing a kimono over her usual fit. So very interesting indeed. I think that just confirms that she's going to join the crew. I can't see it any other way. I just can't. But in the bad timeline, a very funny theme is being continued because we see Yamato hornless, styling her hair in a similar way to Oden, and she simply says, "I am Oden." And then at 60 in the bad timeline, she's just cremated. She's just dead. And it says, "I shall be Oden." Yeah, I guess so. That is crazy. So what's being set up here is that the Oden obsession is a net negative. And not only does she lose herself, she loses her pride, because a very funny theme that's been going on with a few characters is that if the character has horns and that horn is broken, that is a loss of pride, even when you're talking about a horned helmet. Because when Big Mom killed, I believe it was Fallbeard, they repaired his broken helmet, which was horned. So the same thing happens to Kaido as well. His horn is broken by Luffy in the final battle of Wano. So yes, being dehorned is a sign of being disgraced. So continuing on with the Oden obsession is a disgrace. The good timeline has her accepting her for herself and accepting responsibilities of being a big shot that she might not want to take on. But that is her whole path, becoming herself and becoming an individual, stepping out into the world, whereas she previously was just a sheltered child, not able to leave the confines of Onigashima. So yes, I do agree. This is where she'll be going in the future. And yeah, she is going to join the crew. We can make another video about her later based on what people have said about her in the past, but we'll just keep it light for now. However, it is said next up that the person that went to meet with the Gorosei was actually Shamrock. And a lot of people clocked this. I thought it was Shanks, but no, it was actually Shamrock. Okay, so next up, we have something that I have covered in the past, in which we find out that the mustache on the Roger Pirates Jolly Roger are actually just udon noodles. I don't believe that for a second, but that's what we got. I made a video on this. Go check that out. I think he's hiding something. I think Oda is hiding something, because the whole premise of this question is regarding how Roger doesn't have a big mustache as a young man. So why does the Jolly Roger look like that? So it just has something to do with the Jolly Roger having noodles as a mustache, which that is a cop-out answer. I do not believe it. But that brings us to Shiki. So the reader says, to celebrate Shiki's appearance in the main story, please tell us things like his age and the grade of his swords. Oda responds, sure. The character Shiki appears in the movie Strong World. If you're interested, go check it out. Let's see. What can I tell you? He is currently 73 years old, which means he's still alive, and he's older than Whitebeard at his time of death, because Whitebeard was 72. That is wild, bruh. I did not know bruh was that old. Oh, no. So that means his plan might be still in motion. And we see that at the end of chapter 0. So we'll have to wait and see what his plan actually is, seeing as how the movie's not canon. But yes, he's 73 years old. His blades that he uses to walk on now Oto and Kogarashi are skillful gray blades, which have probably been ruined by his bloody stumps. He likes gold leaf sushi, which makes sense because he's very Japanese coded, but we'll get into that in a second. And he hates burdock root. He hails from a place called the Yano country, a place that's like a rougher version of the Wano country. His hobbies are comedy sketches and bonsai. So that's really interesting. Now, that makes me think, I wonder if the Kurozumi clan fled to the Yano country. And that's where Kurozumi Higurashi met Shiki by chance and got to copy his face. Because that would make more sense. Because that has never been explained as to why she knew what Shiki looked like. Super weird. However, that brings us to the end of the SBS where all the relative information is. So, there is going to be another worldwide popularity poll, and it has officially kicked off by the time of this recording. So go vote for your favorite characters. With that being said, if you like what you see here, give me a like. And if you want to see more content from me, hit the sub button. And if you could, hit that bell so you never miss a Poly P Works video. In addition to, could you please hit the hype button because it does help. So to end us off, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Poly P Works.